Leaks. A wise person once told me that all good architecture leaks. While I'm not entirely sure what they meant, leaks must, at the very least, be an important part of architecture. I help manage facilities for an architecture school, and there are a lot of leaks, like this one, or this one. This one hit me on the head. This one sometimes leaks on my students' models. The last of my students who had their model christened by this perennial leak has graduated and now is studying for his master's degree at Princeton University. There must be something to this whole leak thing.
But I didn't really learn that much about leaks when I was in school. To catch up, I've done some research and I've collected some of my personal experiences, and I put together this guide to architecture leaks.
These are my 5 points of leaky architecture. Did you know that there are 4 kinds of leaks? Yeah, I didn't either. I'm not even to my 5 points yet, we're still in the intro. Anyway, there's liquid flow. That's when water just kind of rolls into the building. Then there's capillary action. Apparently materials just want to bring water into buildings so badly that they suck it in like a vacuum. Air movement is number 3. When air gets into buildings, it brings in a certain amount of water that is dissolved in it, and we need air to breathe. We can't just steal off the building. Then there's vapor diffusion, where rogue molecules just pass through materials even though there's no holes, like magic. It seems like leaks are pretty easy to come by.
Leaks are also a contentious issue between clients and architects. We all know that leaks are important, but clients still take them incredibly personally. Peter Eisenman's client for House 6 went so far as to write a book defaming the poor architect who tried to put an awesome leak right into their bedroom.
Here, Eisenman was kind enough to provide an extra service as a marriage counselor, free of charge, and going above and beyond by separating the owner couple's beds and including a perfectly good leak right there to prevent any hanky-panky. Then they're so ungrateful and they go and get all upset about it.
Water intrusion accounts for more than 70% of all construction litigation. The roof is usually the culprit, but at the same time only accounts for 2% of the overall construction cost, leading to a very disproportionate relationship. It's not all on the architects though. The construction industry does their part too, because most leaks are actually caused by improper installation and not an issue related to the design at all. 70% is actually because of construction error, but architects tend to like the spotlight, so they take most of the credit.
While I don't think the formula for good architecture is about the quantity of leaks, one architect who will remain nameless did develop a bucket system rating. According to his system, Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water is a 17-bucket building, while his personal house was a 6-bucket building. Anyway, enough rambling. These are my 5 points of leaking architecture. Point number 1, put a hole in the roof. Yeah, it seems obvious, but holes in roofs are great ways to allow leaks into your building, and there's no better roof hole than the Oculus and the Pantheon in Rome. It's a perfectly circular 27-foot wide or 8-meter hole that caps a hemispherical dome that would hold a 142-foot or 43-meter globe inside. Man, is that a cool hole. It lets in tons of light and water. When the building was used as a church during the Middle Ages, a myth was born that it doesn't actually allow rain inside the building. But that's wrong. The heat from the candles does not create a sufficient updraft to counteract the falling rain. Rather, the architecture accounts for the inevitable water intrusion with a concaved marble floor to funnel water away from the walls, and a series of 22 holes feed a drainage system that draws the water away.
Really, any hole in the roof is going to leak at some point. Buildings are like flowers. You should always water them. But that isn't enough. They require constant cultivation and maintenance. Materials age over time. While roofs are designed to last around 20 years or so, caulk and some other sealants need to be replaced every 2 years. This might lead you to believe that buildings get better with age as they develop more leaks. This is sometimes the case, but not always.
Phyllis Savoy's roof holes were leaky right away. Within a week of moving into the home, in an epic misunderstanding between client and architect over leaks, Madame Savoy couldn't stand it. She wrote a series of famous letters. It is raining in the hall, it's raining on the ramp, and the wall of the garage is absolutely soaked. It's still raining in my bedroom, which floods in the bad weather, as the water comes in through the skylight. And the gardener's wall is also wet through. In the end, Madame Savoy demanded that Le Corbusier pay for the repairs. Otherwise, she would threaten that she would contact her lawyers and take him to court. Like I said, be careful of those litigious clients.
Floods are a great source of water infiltration, and if you're lucky enough to work on a site straddling a floodplain, locating a structure within the flood zone is a surefire way to offer clients the occasional leak. While relatively infrequent, like every 50 or 100 years, they offer some pretty epic opportunities, and global warming can really help with this.
Of course, the Farnsworth House is obviously the most flood-prone of modern masterpieces. While the raising of the building off the ground feigns compromise, the real intention was revealed when a local cabinet maker warned Mies not to build at the site. But Mies, the ever-considerate leak provider, said, "We can combat that, it's easy. You have a canoe right there, and if it floods, you take the canoe to the house. It isn't much, it's an adventure, but that belongs to life. If you're going to choose this option, be aware that if you're in the United States, you'll need to coordinate construction with FEMA. This is the best way to ensure that you're compliant with every major and minor regulation, so you can avoid potential fines, liability issues, and lengthy delays that could negatively impact your bottom line. While floodplains are great, and raised buildings can offer wary clients the appearance of water avoidance issues, digging your building deep into the earth can ensure a more constant, and let's be honest, manageable rate of water infiltration. This is the tactic deployed by Peter Zumthor in the design for the Thermae Baz in Waal, Switzerland. The stone building is partially set into the hillside to seem as though it were formed by nature. Part of that connection with nature includes an epic leak at the entrance, where the water comes in from the springs, which also feed the baths inside. It's allowed to seep into the walls and flow along the hallway. The mineral deposits from the water leave marks on the wall over time in one giant stain. Check out this sweet diagram of the process, which describes how above-ground water, or rain, seeps into the porous ground and rock. During its descent, the water picks up various minerals and becomes warmed up by the heat rising out of the Earth's core. Water eventually flows towards a crack or a fault in the crust and is forced towards the surface, where it becomes a thermal spring, or aka a building leak. But you don't need to go through all of this to get water into your basements. Water that comes up through the cracks in the floor are usually at the cove joint, where the basement foundation meets the floor. It's almost always caused by hydrostatic pressure. Drain tile is typically used to relieve this pressure, but if you wait long enough, it'll fail if you really want it to. Point number 4. Use single layers of absorptive materials with large degrees of thermal expansion. Just listen to Frank Lloyd Wright sympathize with a roof. The sun bakes the roof for 11 months, 2 weeks and 5 days, shrinking it to a shrivel. Then, giving the roof no warning whatsoever to get back to normal if it could, the clouds burst. Unsuspecting roof surfaces are deluged by a 3-inch downpour. Material failures account for some pretty good leaks, and thermal expansion and contraction tends to be a primary culprit. The SR-71 Blackbird would famously leak fuel while sitting on the runway because the titanium fuselage panels were only loosely fitted to the frame to allow for heat expansion. It would stop leaking once the aircraft came up to temperature. So some of the most advanced avionics leaks jet fuel, and the least that architects could do is provide similar accommodations with the much less flammable liquid water. Expansion joints are notorious sources for leaks. These are the parts where buildings are sliced into different parts to allow for materials to expand and contract due to temperature fluctuations. These offer the perfect opportunity for you to slip in some strategically leaky details. Finally, at this point, you might be thinking to yourself, Stuart, all these individual leaks scattered everywhere, they're great, but I want architecture absolutely saturated with condensation. Well, the only remaining solution is to just pump it in. This might sound like a cheat, but if executed well, this technique can be used to really great effect. Dillon Scovidio's Blur building has the most advanced water pump system ever created for a building to immerse visitors in one giant leak. Water is pumped in from the lake and shoots it as a fine mist through 31,500 high-pressure mist nozzles. All this is controlled by a smart weather system that regulates the water pressure. The water vapor creates an artificial cloud. Burst pipes are great ways to increase the moisture content of the interior air. In addition to the direct contact with the water that they offer, they can increase the humidity in the air enough to cause condensation, which can produce secondary water damage. Condensation is super easy to achieve when warm, moist air comes into contact with cooler surfaces that are at or below the dew point. This happens at windows, where water condenses on the surfaces. Moisture can also form as interstitial condensation, occurring within the layers of the building fabric, typically as a result of air diffusing from the warm interior of a building to the cool exterior and reaching its dew point within the construction of the building itself. Simply mixing up where the vapor barrier goes. I can never remember, is it the warm side or the cold side of the installation? Anyway, mixing it up where it goes is a surefire way to develop condensation in your building. So the takeaway is that leaks look different to everyone. They can become sources of power for both architects and clients when architects are excusing the unintended consequences of their genius or when clients are looking for free work. The best course of action is to plan for leaks within multiple contingency plans, and armed with these 5 strategies, you too might be able to create good architecture. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm lords to know that you're into it. Also subscribe if you're into thinking a little bit more about the built environment with me every week. Leave a comment telling me everything about your favorite leak, and after that check out some of my other videos. If you enjoy parodies like this one, you might like the one on George Costanza, or if you're into introductory architectural design issues, check out the playlist Architecture 101. See you guys over there.